Alfonso Cuarón's 2006 film Children of Men is held in high regard among critics and cinephiles worldwide. This praise is well deserved. No one saw it when it came out, but we might put it on the same group of dystopian sci-fi as Blade Runner, Dread or Gattaca, meaning that even if the studio didn't know how to market the movie, we can't hold that against the greatness of the movie itself. Being released at Christmas didn't really help this. Bring the whole family. Though there is something that could ruin this universal acclaim and even turn Children of Men to be a hated movie, without changing anything. What if the only copy of the movie was, let's say, buried under all this rubble and was only recovered now? What if Children of Men came out later this year? I mean, doesn't it feel like it was made this year? It would be fitting for the source material. I recently read the P.D. James novel that the movie was based on. Did you know it was based on a book? I didn't. It was never even big enough to be translated into my language. But anyway, the novel was published in 1992. Its events take place in 2021. Just 2 years after Blade Runner, 1 year after the second Space Odyssey, and 1 year before Soylent Green. May we live in interesting times. The movie isn't the most faithful adaptation. Sure, there's the world that stopped having children and the main protagonist finding the first pregnant woman after this prolonged dry spell. And many little things, but after the novel my first thought was that the creators of the movie bought the film rights to the book just in case that P.D. James might see enough similarities to demand some financial compensation. It wasn't a surprise when I later heard that the director never actually read the book, so he wouldn't try to split his vision. I appreciate this mindset. There was no part in the novel that described a scene like, and then Clive Owen-looking Theo runs through a war zone where everything explodes and everybody dies, so it would be almost impossible to film it in one take, but if it were ever to happen, it would be the greatest single take ever. Yeah, that wasn't in the book. But all the other changes also can feel like they were tailored to be responses to something more recent. Is this a bad thing? Now that I got your attention, let's get distracted with an HBO series that's a sequel to a comic that happened in 1985, and the story happens now. Watchmen 2019 got a lot of criticism for being so woke that it had to be made at this exact moment. The main protagonist was made into a black lady, so much about police brutality, more gayness, race relations, the antagonists were white supremacists. For all this, I'm not gonna criticize Watchmen at all, because these weren't really changes to the themes of the source material. Watchmen was always woke as fuck. There was homophobia, more ethical dilemmas with law enforcement. Only female characters were there to unsuccessfully avoid rape and trying to cope with that. Vietnam was just a pawn that USA conquered for the lulz during the ultimate dick measuring contest between the two superpowers, that being the Cold War. This timeline gave rise to Ku Klux Klan being more powerful than ever. Not too much of a stretch in a world where an American white guy became what many considered a literal god and won the Vietnam War for them. The smartest man in the world also was a white guy, so fuck everyone else, I guess. But anyway, I'm not gonna spoil anything about Watchmen. Just wanted to remind that Watchmen can be seen as an outlier for being a sequel to something where the main themes didn't really need that much of tinkering to make it look like it was made as a response to just now. It could deliver Nightingale levels of white guilt and be forgiven. But with this in mind, let's now imagine Children of Men being the Christmas release of 2020. Here's my made-up review. I'm just going to put on my critic glasses. Alfonso Cuarón's response to the world today comes to us with the subtlety of a sledgehammer painted as a Union Jack. All is here. Immigration crises, police violence, rioting, Brexit, kids in cages at the border. Think of a trending buzzword. This movie wants to be about it. It's 2027 and the humans quit having babies 18 years before. No one still knows why. So we follow an alcoholic British government employee who works at the Department of Orwellian References. We see news flashes of rioting all over the world. Every capital city is in flames because of course they are. Britain is a shit show too, but we are told it's still better than most. All places are full of refugee camps that are clearly there just to be US-Mexico border times infinity. What? Britain keeps sending back everyone who wants to enter? Really? I wonder how this might relate to the real world. Clive Owen's character meets Danny Huston. He protects famous art by keeping it out of the hands of the rioting masses. Oh, is it too subtle to make a connection if we don't show a broken David and Picasso's Copernica in consecutive scenes? But wait, it gets worse. We see Theo gambling in a dog race. So, since the world is running out of athletes, we need this to be a thing. I bet if this was filmed in the USA, the dogs would live in Disney World. Theo is kidnapped by resistance movement and meets his ex, played by Julianne Moore. She's there just to be a recognizable name for the posters, as she's killed before we reach a half-hour mark. Being an American, she's also the only non-British character that's treated like a human being. This Mexican director really has weird fixations to Brexit that likely derive from Trump and his refugee policies. Theo discovers the first pregnant woman the world has seen in 18 years. Now, in the novel, it was Moore's character that was pregnant. But of course we need to have the representation quota meter filled, so now we have a black girl in this role, because those lives matter too, and they should be in more movies, you know. Michael Caine plays an old hippie who is said to have been a political satirist. But now there's nothing for him left but getting high. I guess he's made to be a stand-in for Jon Stewart, but the whole message is clear. World got so stupid that it became redundant to make fun of the establishment. Oh really, movie? Are you so condescending to us that you have to remind us that US politics under Trump have been a bit too silly for meaningful satire? No shit. Thank you, movie. Go home to feel smart. I promise to hang this DVD on my fridge. This is also one of the few instances we see any technology used. Here and everywhere in the movie, all new tech is only used for surveillance and propaganda. This form of control is obvious allegory for Google, Facebook and all the ways our information is collected without our consent. I guess they decided to leave out the face recognition tech just so they could get this movie to theaters in China. Theo drags the pregnant lady to a refugee camp where she gives birth. The plan is to get her and the baby to the Human Project, which might be a thing, it's not really explained. But then a war breaks out and everything explodes. At one point, a group of peaceful immigrants/protesters walk toward government tanks and get instantly shot. Really? Law enforcement shoots innocent unarmed colored folks? Wait, too subtle. They have to use machine guns and use all the bullets. Otherwise the audience might feel they are missing the message. Much like the scene where Julianne Moore dies, this is all shot to look like one take, and it is impressive in technical terms. But haven't we seen enough of this? After Birdman and 1917, we can safely say that this was just a gimmick to make it look like the movie had more going on than it really had. Overall, this was a blatant attempt to cash into all that's trending right now, and we can all see through it. Movie ends with a glimmer of hope, but it might also be that no one is ever gonna have nice things ever again. 2 out of 10. This was as eye-opening as hearing Joker telling me that we live in society. This movie will be forgotten in a month. So back to real world. It was said that hindsight always has 20/20 vision. Now 20/20 hindsight seems to mean who cares, everything's going to be terrible anyway. I would like to talk about Children of Men for an hour straight, but this was just a mini episode. I'm just gonna say that it was a nice nod to the novel that almost every shot in this movie had some animal in it, and how they all liked Theo. Original story had people having extravagant parties for pet birthdays and such events, as they had to protect their instincts to something when the kids were gone. It seems realistic. I can relate, as I have recently spent way too much time trying to find hats for my snake.